On the air with us. Hi there.
Aloha from Hawaii.
Well, hello there. Thank you.
Hi.
Graham, it's such an exciting show. I've heard some of the best shows ever on George's program, and this one has the possibility of opening the minds of millions of Americans and possibly internationally to the possibility of plants and what they're here to teach us.
Thank you. Thank you for saying that. I hope that this show and my book, Supernatural, can in some way contribute to do that, to bring in a huge body of information which is rationally and scientifically presented, which gives us permission, if you like, to explore these extraordinary possibilities that our society has been so down on for so long.
Well, I want to say bravo on how you treated that last obviously schizophrenic caller who related marijuana to demonic possession.
Yes, but marijuana cannot be linked to demonic possession. Unfortunately, people do have preformed views which are not based on their own experience, but simply what they've heard on the news media, and they haven't really paused to sit down and analyze these views properly.
You know, Graham, I also would wish that governments, at least in this country, the United States, would allow the medicinal use of marijuana to help people. I have interviewed so many people in my broadcasting career who cannot take pharmaceutical prescription pain pills.
Absolutely.
Makes them sick. It doesn't work.
Absolutely.
Yet they have tried medicinal marijuana for their pain and their ailments. And it works. Dramatic changes.
It works instantly. It is truly a healing and positive plant for so many people. And again, it's a sign of the madness and the criminal violence of our society that it dictates whether or not we may experience the healing effects of this plant. It is an extraordinary thing to call the consumption of marijuana a crime. It is a victimless crime, if it's a crime at all. An individual alone in his or her own house sampling a plant which has been with humanity since the beginning of time, for that to be called criminal is insane. We live in an insane society that believes it has a right to patrol even our consciousness, not only to tell us how to behave out there in public, but to tell us actually what to think and what to experience. And that's the main objection to marijuana by our governments, is the effects that it has on consciousness. And they don't care that it is a fantastic pain reliever, which it is. They don't care about its wonderful medical properties. They just want to stop anybody experiencing these effects on consciousness. And no wonder our society is in such a mess, where we imagine we live in a democracy and yet elect governments that actually have the nerve to tell us what we may and may not experience inside our own heads without doing any harm to others.
Yet the poppy fields flourish in Afghanistan.
The poppy fields flourish in Afghanistan. There is so much hypocrisy, so much humbug in government positions on these matters. Governments know perfectly well that the rules that they have made, the misery that they inflict on people's lives, don't get rid of these problems. If we really want to solve the problem of drugs, we need to open up the whole issue to broad public discussion, and we have to accept and admit that certain plant products, such as these ancient hallucinogens that shamans use, are entirely beneficial in their interaction with the human race.
Maybe they don't want us to open up our minds.
They don't. This is what governments are afraid of. They are afraid of a citizenry that is fully conscious. They actually want us to be unconscious. They want us to simply focus on this alert, problem-solving, competitive mentality that makes us good consumers and good competitors in the business place. But they don't want us to explore the majestic and amazing depths of our consciousness, because then we just might start asking questions that would be very uncomfortable for the powers that be.
Graham Hancock, stick around for final phone calls right here on Coast to Coast AM. On our next Coast to Coast program, it'll be that typical Friday night and the Saturday morning open line, so make sure you're part of the program as we take you into the weekend right here on Coast to Coast AM. Graham, can you tell us a little bit about junk DNA, what you believe it is, before we go back to final calls?
Yes, just to go quickly into that, we talked about Francis Crick earlier, the discoverer of the structure of DNA, for which he won a Nobel Prize. And I mentioned one astonishing fact about Francis Crick, which he admitted shortly before his death in 2004, which is that he was under the influence of a hallucinogen, under the influence of LSD, when he first saw the double helix structure of DNA. So this vision, this teaching came to him in an altered state of consciousness. Now, later in his life, in fact, in the 1980s, this Nobel Prize winner, Francis Crick, published an extraordinary book called Life Itself, in which he argues from a scientific point of view that life, the DNA molecule, which is the essence of life, could not have got started by accident on this planet. He didn't believe it could. He compared it to, he said it's about as likely that, you know, this idea of the primeval soup and molecules accidentally bumping against each other, producing life, which so many of our scientists like.
Sure.
Crick compared that to, thought that was about as likely as the assembly of a fully functioning jumbo jet by a hurricane in a junkyard. It is just such an extraordinarily complicated molecule, the DNA molecule, and its relationship to the proteins equally complicated. So to cut a long story short, he suggested it was sent here by an alien civilization from the other side of the universe who faced certain doom, perhaps, as a result of a supernova explosion. They sought to preserve the essence of life, and so they sent bacteria out into the universe in spaceships loaded with DNA. Those bacteria, one of those spaceships crashed into the early Earth. This theory is Crick's theory. It's called directed panspermia. Its cargo of bacteria spilled out and started reproducing and evolving, and eventually became us. And that's honestly how Francis Crick, the Nobel Prize winner, saw the beginning of life on this planet. Now, if by chance he was right, and we can't dismiss that, the man won a Nobel Prize, after all, for the study of DNA, then we have to consider another possibility, which is that supposed civilization on the other side of the galaxy that sent DNA to this planet may have genetically engineered that DNA. It's recently been discovered that DNA is a fantastic recording medium. Patents are being taken out all over the world to use DNA as a recording device, that it would be possible to record vast quantities of information on DNA. Right now, today, our scientists can record 100-word songs on DNA, and it's been done on the DNA of the E. coli bacteria. But the evidence suggests that its storage capacity is limitless, perhaps even enough to record the entire knowledge of a civilization. So that's the idea, that maybe on so-called junk DNA, which is 97% of our DNA, only 3% of our DNA is involved in genes. The rest we don't know what it does, and the scientists call it junk DNA. Maybe that contains and has contained since the beginning of evolution recorded messages, interactive recorded information from our makers, waiting for the evolution of a creature that would be able to understand those messages and decode them. And the suggestion is that creature is us, and the decoding method is altered states of consciousness. So this is a parallel possibility that I review in Supernatural, along with the possibility that spirit worlds are real, which I repeat is my favorite of the two possibilities.
First-time caller line, you're on the air with us. Good morning.
Oh, hi, my name is Rick from San Diego.
Hey, Rick.
Hi, it's an honor to be on your show, George.
Thank you.
One comment I wanted to make was I want to make a comment and ask a question of
Sure.
Hancock. My comment is, I since I started studying DMT and when I read Rick Strassman's book 2 years ago, it has occurred to me that the final solution to this war on drugs will be to put a microchip in all of us to suppress our DMT.
Yes.
And that would be the real meaning behind Revelations, because by cutting us off from DMT, it cuts us off from God, this microchip that will be placed in all of us.
Thank you for. Can I just come in there, because that's a very interesting point that you're making. Firstly, the way you see our society developing. Unfortunately, you're absolutely right. Our society is developing more and more in the direction of a thought police that control every thought we have. And for those thought police, the powers that be in the states that run our lives, the DMT molecule is particularly terrifying because it is, in fact, as you rightly observe, produced by our own brains. Rick Strassman's excellent work at the University of New Mexico, which I report in Supernatural, demonstrated absolutely that DMT is produced in the pineal gland in the brain, and that DMT seems to be our inbuilt mechanism